So, what does it actually look like to build both a business that is wildly profitable and deeply purposeful? And I'm not talking about the Instagram version or the vision board version. I mean, the messy, the real, I started from nothing and built 9 companies version. Well, that is our guest today, Miss Lara Gisborne. And I'm just so honored to have her on the show because not only has she built and sold multiple businesses, but she also led a multi-million dollar wine and real estate empire. She actually led her Limitless Woman community to raise $750,000 for charities around the world. And she did all this by being raised in poverty by a teenage mother. Okay, y'all? So this is for every woman who's ever doubted, like, if she could build this wildly profitable business and have soul and be aligned with her soul, because Lara is proof that you can have it all, the purpose and the business. So without further ado, I want to welcome Miss Lara to our show, the Meta Business Millennial. Welcome to the show, Lara.
Thank you, Erin. I'm very honored and I'm excited to spend time with you and get to know you better.
Awesome, awesome. Well, without further ado, I want to talk about, your journey to now.
Mhm.
Especially, you say you started your first business at 23. And most people are just graduating from college,
Yeah,
getting over their drinking habits.
or not.
and,
Yeah.
and so, what was really driving you at that age?
So I don't want to take credit for that. I mean, that's the way it gets kind of spun sometimes in the media, but I married into a family business. And so they had already been open, I think when Peter and I got married, they'd been open maybe about 6 months. They were still really in their infancy. And so he was in the business, his sister was in the business, his brother-in-law was in the business, and his parents were always around just to support and to lead us. His dad had been a really successful entrepreneur for many years. And so, yeah, I was a kid, just like you're saying. I had just come out of college. I was in between my undergraduate and law school. I met this man. We fell in love. I had a 9 to 5 job Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, I thought I should waitress or bartender, do something to make money. And met him, fell in love. And, the rest is history.
That is so beautiful. Well, I mean, we talked about you growing up in poverty, like I opened up with that, but I would love to kind of dig a little bit deeper into what that looked like for you because generally we know the narrative, like
Yeah,
teenage pregnancy, growing up in poverty, oh, you're so disadvantaged and
yeah,
you're a minority, all the labels that get, placed upon people. And I'm sure there are lots of women here who've had their own kind of rags to riches type stories. And I would love for you to just walk us through kind of how you overcame some of those stigmas, if you will, or stereotypes.
yeah. I think the piece, I mean, I believe that we're all doing the best we can with what we know, on a good day. And we have bad days too. But for the most part, my mother's story is her story to tell. And I will say that, my perception as a child was the perception of a child. So although when we talk about where I grew up in humble beginnings, nobody in my family had ever been to college. My parents worked really hard. No matter how hard they worked, there was never enough. There was kind of that piece. Now, well, my mom again was very young. She was 19 when she got pregnant with me. My biological father, died a few weeks later in a bad drug deal. So that's a whole nother story. Again, like I said, it's her story to tell. So
Mhm.
here she was, this young woman. And I think about what was I like at 19? What did I know at that age, which is not a lot, right? And so I think, that piece, when we look at where I came from, what I always want to presence is that because I was born in the United States, our version of what was tough was not nearly as tough as what I've experienced for women in other places in the world, right? I mean, things
Right.
like having access to water, things like having access to sanitation, meaning like not only a toilet, but sanitary pads, things that we can often take for granted, even in the hardest circumstances in the United States. We can turn on the water in a faucet. We might be struggling, but we have access to free education. What a presence
Mhm.
that, so I'd say the hardship of my childhood is probably a lot like many of the women that are listening to your show. It
Mhm.
had a lot to do with the messaging of, I wish you hadn't been born, you ruined my life, a series of uncles and stepfathers that molested me from the time I was 2 until the time I was 15.
Mm.
There's those things and the violence and the alcohol and the drugs. There's those things that made it really hard.
Mm.
where when I was, when I left home at 17, I was on my own. And in my first relationship, I moved into a domestic violence relationship. I weighed 98 pounds. I was severely anorexic. And I lived with a man that beat me on a regular basis because that was my normal.
Yeah.
That's the tough, right? That's the tough. And I had opportunity. And that's why I'm here today, for the grace of God and for the women who saw me when I could not see myself,
That part.
get to be on the other side. But it was really those who saw me, including the Lord, that made today possible. It wasn't anybody's fault from where I came from.
Okay, I have like chills because this is exactly what determines the victim from the creator. And I
Yeah,
talk about this so much in my teaching around how we move from that victim mode to creator
yeah,
mode to start to create our dreams and create our own reality.
that's right.
And the first step is by acknowledging responsibility and take accountability, and
Yeah,
you're not blaming anyone first
correct.
and foremost. And so you're like, I'm responsible for my life. I'm responsible for my decisions. Everyone else's story is their story. What they
Correct.
did to me is what they have to do. That's their karma with God, or that's their conversation with God rather. And
Right.
what I choose is what I choose.
Yeah.
And what you've just shared here, you know, would bring most people to their knees. And, just to be able to just so, clearly and articulately speak to it in a way that is almost like an observation, like you're telling a story of someone else's life, but these horrible, horrific things happen to you. And you aren't even labeling them as such. You're just like, these are people's stories and their journeys. And so I just want to commend you and honor you for the work that you've done
Yeah.
in healing that and offering them forgiveness and then modeling that for women, because that is exactly why you're in the position that you're in. I just have to say that.
Thank you, darling. Well, I think, I turned 60 this year. And so there's also the place of I'm in the position now to look back to the young emerging leaders and to give them a hand up in the same way that someone gave me a hand up, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's a full circle thing that I think is beautiful in the ecosystem of women and how we are with each other. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
conversation that is not that, but I'm going to tell you that everywhere that I've traveled in the world, I've seen this. I've seen this in places where people live off the grid. I've seen it in places where there's a lot of affluence and privilege. Women are naturally designed to nurture each other, to care for each other. And so
Mm-hmm.
when we allow ourselves to receive support, that's when things start to open up. And I think part of what was a little bit different for me, Erin, I think than many people, is because I was told as a child that I wasn't wanted. I,
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I had that much to lose. Like I really felt like I was coming from not much. I didn't feel like I was worthy. I was like, do you need me to take out your cat? Do you need me to, drive your kids to school? Do you need me? Whatever you need. I was so needy, right? Because I was just needing to be loved and attended to. I didn't know how to love myself yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think that piece is, I had to let in the people who wanted to help me. And I think that's, if there's a secret sauce to from there to here, that's
Mm-hmm.
really got to be it. It's got to be when you allow yourself to receive support and stop trying to look good. And look at me, I'm putting my makeup on so I can look cute for you today. But like trying to like posture in the world. And we all do that. We all start from a place of like, if I could just be good enough, if I could just try harder, if I could just look good, maybe I'll be enough, right? There's something that lives in that's not just my story. It's the story of so many women that I meet every day. So understanding that you're already fantastic the way that God made you. There's no one like you. You are literally, we know with science and spirituality coming together, we've got the combination of what we believe as people of faith, those of us that have a faith tradition that tells us that we're children of God and we're one of a kind. And then people who are like coming from a different perspective, more from a scientific perspective, we've got things like your iris, your fingerprint, your DNA that prove there's no one like you. So what is that?
Mm-hmm.
What you want to talk about purpose? There's just one of you. And your purpose may not be to be Mother Teresa. I know mine's not. Your purpose may be to just be the best version of you that you're here to be. And that's what we want to see more women really find for themselves.
Yes, absolutely. I second that motion because, it is in the purpose that you understand what you can contribute to this world. And if I may use that to inspire this next question, so much of your business is tied to purpose. And your unique purpose obviously is yours, and so I mean that's really all you can speak to. I would really like to understand like what was the through line through these businesses as you know built one, sold it, or maybe it didn't grow into the level you wanted, so you moved to the next one. What really kept you motivated and going, and what really emerged for you at that purpose statement, if you will?
Well, I'm just thinking about your bio, Missy, and and I have a feeling we might have a little more in common than you think.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't, I couldn't not be creative, right? I didn't see myself as creative, Erin. I thought I was like on the path. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to go to law school. I'm very serious. I'm, to do the right thing because that was kind of the messaging. If you could just get an education, you can get to the next level in life, right?
Yeah.
And what I found as an entrepreneur is that after I married into a restaurant business, I loved that. And I loved the opportunity to be there. And was really blessed with an incredibly nurturing, loving family there. And then I became a mama. And I knew that I didn't want to work all these hours and work, kind of this crazy schedule. So we came up with the idea of like, how would we create a restaurant that was only open for lunch? We'd seen this in a few places. Like, what would it look like to build your business around your life where you could actually be with your child, you could work on his schedule, do, that kind of business? How do we monetize that? So it was kind of the first seed. Now we built Peter and I had 3 restaurants, including his original restaurant that he gets credit for with his family. And then we built 2 more. Then we sold those businesses and moved to Arizona and then got into real estate. And so real estate sales led to real estate development, led to real estate investing. And, while we were doing that spin, somebody asked me, would you help me with my tanning salon? Now you can see I put a bunch of makeup on, but I am white as a ghost, right? See through. Right? I don't know. I don't know if I can help you. I can't even go in the sun. I'm going to turn into a lobster, but let me see if I can help. But they had this new technology that was called a spray tan. Now, this is back in the day, girl. So it was like spray tan. Oh, that's like makeup for your body. I could be tan for the first time in my life. I'm so excited about this. So got involved and helped her and then bought her out. In the meantime, my husband had this idea that we could take over the wine business in Arizona. We'd gone to a wine tasting in California. I don't know how much time you want to hear about every business, but I'm give the idea of like how things get started. We went to a wine in California. He had never been to one. He didn't even drink wine. He said, this is the greatest thing. Why don't we do this in Sedona where we lived? I was like, okay. He's like, I think we could take over the Arizona wine business. I'm like, you don't even drink wine. How are we going to do that? He's like, no problem. You drink enough for both of us. Let's go. So we opened up the wine store. We opened up a tasting room at 980 square feet. Within 6 months, we sold $140,000 worth of clothing out of the wine store. So the wine store was up and running. We had housewares. It was called The Art of Wine. It's still there today in Sedona if you want to go see them. They're beautiful people that own it today. And so we had art, we had clothing, we had housewares. And I'm like, this item is selling a whole lot. Maybe we need a clothing store and maybe I need to design clothes. So that had me spin off and open our designer clothing line, which is called Erica Morgan, which is our daughter's name. And so it's kind of one business led to another business. When people hear 9 businesses, often they think that I've had all of them at the same time, which is not how it worked. It was like birthing babies. One would birth the next one, and then I would get it up and running and systemized because I love the creative process. But I wasn't the person to go to work every day and have to be in the trenches and pouring the wine or dressing the ladies or doing those things. That's not my superpower.
Right. And I love that you talked about it was like a sequencing, because I think a lot of people feel like they need to have it all now. And as you were talking about the businesses, it felt like you were moving from the thing that gave you the most joy. And we were talking a bit about purpose and just wondering like how do you move from just like working on your business to actually being fulfilled in that business?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when I was in law school, I was working at a law office during the day, going to school at night. And I started volunteering. I heard about 𝗲𝗃, which is Court Appointed Special Advocates for Foster Children. And I had never been a volunteer before, but I thought this sounds really cool. And they were looking for volunteers. It'd come through the law office I was working at. So I applied to be a volunteer. I went through the training. I was hooked, right? So I was working with children, work as a guardian ad litem to help foster children and families either reconcile or find a safe, permanent home for the children. So I was healing my own inner child at the time, right? I'm going through therapy, I'm doing my own growth, and there was an opportunity to be of service. I started there. So the whole time I was building restaurants and retail and real estate. I was always volunteering. Once I started with this organization, it moved to family outreach. It moved to being on the school board, building the school with my children, being on Habitat for Humanity's board, being on the board for 𝗲𝗵𝗶𝘀 Alliance. Again, in the same thing, one thing would lead to another. I would come in, I would serve, I would do what I was doing. So here, to answer your question, the bottom line is this. When I started being asked to speak and lead, I was not a speaker. I was not an author. This is nowhere on my purview at all. I just prayed to be shown. I said, what do I know that I could help people with, right? And what I knew is that I had one foot in the nonprofit world for 30 years, right? At this point, 35. I have one foot in the private sector world. How do I bring those two things together? Because I could find a lot of really purposeful, focused, mission-driven people in the nonprofit world. But in the private sector, the big motivator was capitalism and profits and this piece, right? So I said, what if business could actually be shifted and become a force for good? And what I kept seeing was women. My invitations were very global. They were like, can you come to China? Can you come to India? Places that I'd never been before. And I was like, how do these people find me? It was very strange, right? But I've learned to listen to the synchronicities, Erin. And I think that this is, how I feel. I feel like we pray, we meditate, we ask the divine to share with us the guidance. And then I feel like God speaks to us in the synchronicities. So if I keep hearing the same thing, or it keeps showing up random things that seem random, but they keep showing up again and again, I start to look for what's the through line. And so what has now grown into Limitless Women started as Powered with Passion, right? It was our first brand. People said, how do you do it? I'm like, I follow my passion, clearly. Then it moved to Passion, Purpose, and Profits. We were starting to see an inkling of like how we could do this. And then in 2015, we completely remodeled our business and said, we're going to donate the first 20% of all of our gross revenue to charity. We're going to use this business as a vehicle and a force for good. And that's how we've gotten to where we are now.
I mean, that's amazing, because I feel like, all of us deeply want to be able to give back, and to be able to do so in a way that's structured, in a way that's really aligned to your business growth and to your family. It's really a gift. And, I really want to talk specifically about the charity, because I mentioned that you had raised over $700,000, maybe even more to this day for women around the world. And how did that even start for you? And then where does that money go, and what is it supporting?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for asking. So the first fundraiser was the first Limitless Women event. And I thought I would invite 100 of my girlfriends to come together and have each of them make a $50 contribution, right? So I was raising $5,000 was my target. Well, we had 50, lots of women said, yeah, and then they didn't come, and life was lifing for them, right? So we had 50 women show up. I thought, okay, I think with 50 women in the room, let's really wow them and just pour into them and then invite them to make contribution. I thought my target at that point was like, maybe we can get to $10,000, because we're going to really just blow these ladies away. And so at the end of our first event, my business manager at the time, her name was Brenda, came to the stage. She handed me a piece of paper, and I didn't know what was going on, because I didn't know if it was a note from the kid or what was going on, right? And on the note, it said, you've collected $35,000. And I went to my knee. I mean, I was literally just in awe. I was in awe of what a group of women can do, and the power of women, seeing the value proposition of being able to use their voices, use their businesses as catalyst. We had an incredible speaker who was with us. Her name is 𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. She's the founder of the Unstoppable Foundation. She's a really powerful, amazing woman. And she was one of my early mentors. And she, it was the beginning. It was the beginning. So then I prayed to be shown what's the next milestone. Because as a business person, I look at what are the metrics. I'm a person who loves numbers. What's the goal? How do we reverse plan that? What are the metrics? What are the milestones? What are the things we need? What are the assets, et cetera? So I looked and said, okay, what would be the way I would know that this was the right thing, that we were on the right track? So we've got business training fundraisers. We've changed our model. We're going to donate the first 20%, which I don't recommend to somebody if they don't love numbers, by the way. You got to learn how to run on 80%, but tithing works. So my goal was 250,000 over 5 years. And we got to the 5-year mark. And in the meantime, COVID was happening. I mean, the world was quite messy, right?
Yeah.
In 2021. And we got to the 5-year mark, and we were not at 250,000. We were at 600,000. So, I was like, oh, I think we're doing something right here, right? We're on the right.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there were some things that happened in life. I was in a head on collision. I took off for a couple of years. Our business kept going, which was kind of an amazing thing. We kept generating revenue and we kept making donations even without me working. So I knew I had actually built a business instead of me being the business, right? And being self-employed.
Yeah.
Which is how we've kind of got where we are today. I'm healed. Thank you, Lord. I've had 5 surgeries. My spine is fused. I'm strong and, a lot to be grateful for.
Wow, that's incredible. And I think that one thing that, we can take away from your journey and your story and that is that, you can set your goals and you can do the work, but you just have to have that unconditional trust in God and universe to really come through and meet you the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Because we can really, and especially when it comes to money, because a lot of times I think there's a lot of fear that, money has
Yes.
been used in so many ways, in an oppressive way. So a lot of people have a lot of fear around money, to really just trust the process, because even if it isn't there, like, for example, say, you have this event, maybe not you, but other people, and actually you come way under, then what was the value that was created beyond the money that we have to sometimes qualify?
So good.
And I think that that's something too that, a lot of us, myself included, have to work with and understand.
Well,
And
yeah, I was going to just interject something here because I don't think
yeah,
I
of
answered
course.
this fully in the question. I think it's really important. So the reason why we have our model the way we do, Erin, and it's really important, it's very strategic, is that the number one objection women have to philanthropy that I hear is that someday when I get there, I can give, right?
Yes.
So like, I'm not ready yet, I'm not enough yet, there's this piece, right? What lives underneath us not being very successful often in business is that driver of not enough, right? You're not enough, you're too black, you're too white, your hair is too
Yes.
red, it's too purple, it's too pink, it's too white, it's, whatever the number, we just play with this. You're too fat, you're too skinny, too tall, too short. We got a whole lot of this going on in our
Yeah, a lot
conversation.
of excuses.
And what this is, my love, it's a luxury in a way. And I don't mean to sound unkind when I say that, but when I'm in Africa, when I'm on the ground and I'm working with folks who don't have access to water, all they want is like education for their children. All they want is to be able to empower the next generation so that things can be better for their babies, right? Nobody's saying, my hair doesn't look good, I got the wrong clothes on, I need a different pair of heels. So this poverty consciousness, this not enoughness that lives with us in the developed world is
Yes.
actually like a man-made thing, right?
Yes.
We have enough and we are more than enough. However,
Yes.
we're not in touch with sufficiency. We're in touch with a different message. So in the act of inviting people to make a donation, so somebody says, hey, I want to be in your education program. We say, great. You could make a donation. They're like, oh, no, I can't afford to make a donation. I'm like, can you afford tuition? Yes, perfect. Take the first 20% of your tuition dollar and you donate that to the charity of your choice. I'm going to teach you how to do this and have your business make the donation so you get a great tax write-off. And your business now actually joins our businesses as a force for good. It's not someday when you get there. It's for every sale that comes in. You got to learn to sell. You got to learn to build a business. It's not about, let me go beg and borrow for venture capital. This is actually build a real business with real consistent recurring revenue. For every dollar you bring in, you can choose what you want to do with it. For every dollar we bring in, we invite you to make the donation so that you can actually have the action as a catalyst for change. What
Hmm.
happens then when a woman learns to actually see herself, her identity shifts. She actually starts to see herself as somebody who's a change maker. She starts to
Yes.
see herself as somebody who is not a victim of her circumstances. In fact, not only is she capable, she's powerful.
Exactly. And that is actually what changes the world
I hope
fundamentally.
so. We're doing our like there's one of me, there's one of you, there's 8 billion people on the planet, and I need now 8,000 of my girlfriends to each reach 1 million lives. If we do that, think about the whole world being different.
That part. And how you're changing people's lives is not, like you said, just giving them clothes, giving them a food sack, giving them a schoolhouse. You're doing it by enabling them to see their own power.
Yes.
I don't know if necessarily enabling is necessarily the proper term, but it's allowing them, demonstrating for them the ability to see their own power. And
Yeah.
so I think that that fundamentally is what changes. And that's essentially what I'm really passionate about in my work, is really inspiring this self-awareness for women, and that we have the ability to change our lives and have exactly what we want and have it all. And one thing, we kind of glossed over is that you've been doing all this while being a mother, while being a devoted wife, while being a family member. And I can't not, acknowledge, and ask, like, how have you been able to manage that? Because being married from 22, 23 to, that you mentioned, you say your age, 60, that,
I'm
that's a,
embracing my 60-year-old self. I think it's kind of
yeah, that's a major feat, first of
yeah,
all.
especially since I was almost not here a few years ago. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? In my car accident, when the officer was pulling me out of the car, he just said, I don't know why you're alive. And the first thing that came out of my mouth, Erin, was God's not done with me yet. And I wasn't trying to be blasé, but it was literally the first thought that I had was God's not done
Period.
with me yet. So,
Yeah.
then I got to go into the next wake up call. And I think, at this age, I should be pretty awake. But if I have more to learn, I believe it's part of my faith and my belief that I'm going to be shown the opportunity. Now it's whether I show up and respond to the opportunity, or whether I'm a good steward of the gifts that are bestowed
Mhm.
upon me. That's a daily opportunity for growth.
Exactly. And I'm so glad you brought that up in terms of God's not done with me yet. I've had this horrible accident, because every challenge is our opportunity for testimony.
Yeah.
And I talk about it ad nauseum on this show, but I'm going through one of the hardest seasons in my life, a custody situation with my son, where the court decided that should be with his father full time. So I see him every other week, más o menos,
Yeah.
and it's a very, very painful situation to be in. Yet at the same time, I have to be able to see the promise from God in it, in
Yeah.
that I will have all that I want and I desire in that relationship with my son, even though it looks like my world's going to fall apart.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's so many such scenarios, whether it's getting in a head-on collision or being in a very bitter custody battle,
Right.
with your children's, parent, other parent, whether because it goes both sides for men and women, where we are in these situations where it feels like the whole world is against us and we're gonna die, at the end of it. But these are really the scenarios that build the character, if you will, and really allow us to have that deeper trust in God. And so I think that's a beautiful story that you shared.
Thank you, honey. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I really want to start digging into your book. And we didn't mention that, but you have your book called Stop the Spinning,
Mhm.
and Moving from Surviving to Thriving. So obviously that title shares with us that you're out of that survival mode. And so what is it that the work that you've done that really has allowed you to thrive and continually thrive? I think we touched on it a bit, but I'd love to
Yeah.
understand a little bit more about that book.
So the book is written, and it's an easy read, and I'm going to give you a link where you can have a free copy. If you're interested, you can get an audio copy, or you can get the PDF and read through it. And it's written it was interesting. Before I got on the call today with you, I was thinking about the woman who helped me again, Marsh Engel. It was a woman who wrote a book called Amazing Women. And I reached out to her and said, can you help me? People keep asking me for a book. And I'm like, I'm not an author. I have no idea how to do this. And she did. She took me under her wing and helped me make it happen. But the book is written in what we came up with is a formula, the power up formula, right? So I looked at what are the things that we all have in common? What are the things that have you and I be the same, Erin? We have a lot of places to show us where we're different. What are the things we have all in common? The first chapter of the book is the power of 1 minute. And it just talk about my relationship with time. And I was a poster child for I don't have time and I'm running around and blah, blah, blah. And then Peter and I, my first husband and I, got divorced. I just really am feeling for you when you're talking about what you're going through with your custody battle with your son. I'm my own version of that. And it was my wake up call, right? It was my opportunity to say what matters to me. And what kind of mother do I want to be to my
That
children?
part.
I don't have them full time anymore because I have a
Yes.
good ex-husband. He's a great ex-husband, actually. And joint custody means that he has them when I don't have them, right? Like, what does that look like? So I looked at how I spent my time. I looked at what was important. I started reevaluating how I spend my time, and that's in the first chapter of the book. The next chapter of the book is overflowing abundance. There's no lack of cash on the planet. What happens is our energetic match for cash flow is different based on what we feel like we deserve, what our circumstances are, and what we choose to focus on. And again, I believe personally that we live in a country where there's an incredible amount of opportunity. There's a lot of adversity and there's a lot of challenges. And at the same time, it's never been a better time to live in the world, right? We've never had more access to resources and opportunity in history that we're aware of. So the women who get it together start paying attention to their numbers. And it's just like a plant. If you don't feed it and you don't water it and you don't take care of it, it's going to die, right? That's how you do with your money. If you want to have a good relationship with your money, you have to learn that money is here simply as a form of energy to serve you. It doesn't mean anything. It's not good or bad. It's literally the result of your actions. So if your actions are not giving you the results that you want, what different actions can you take? This is just a little highlight. The third chapter is walking in faith. I won't take you through all 7, but I just give you that whole idea of like, what does it look like to wake up and not be able to see the results and be like, okay, I think I'm doing the wrong thing. And then listen, right? Go quiet. My secret to success is that I generally don't speak to people. Most days, I won't say every day, but most days I really don't get on and have calls before 1 p.m. I have a lot of time in the morning for myself, my relationship with God, my relationship with my family, my relationship with my own assets and what's going on with my money and what are my responsibilities and my taxes. I take care of the things that need to be taken care of. And I build my business around my life, not my life around my business. I know that my energy is good at this time of the day. And this is the time of the day I'll get on camera and I'll chat with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's it. Healthy boundaries.
Healthy
And I think that this is something that we talk about a lot too on this show is being able to say no to those things that are not going to serve you in this moment. And being able to carve out that time specifically for yourself to cultivate your power, cultivate your being, get in alignment. And I'm just reminding myself of this too, be aligned before you take action.
That's right.
Process goal alignment. There's so many ways of saying it, but that time with God, that time with self, that time with your business is exactly what you need before you go out to do something about it. And because if not, you're just going to stay on that hamster wheel. So I know we got to wrap this up. So I wanted to ask you some.
Ask me another question, but let me just put a caboose on the train.
Oh, sure.
And I don't want you to, if somebody's listening to this, that my life is a series of drama, because it's really not. It's like really peaceful and calm and lovely. And yet I'm a normal person having normal experiences. And in 2017, my husband had emergency open heart surgery and was diagnosed terminal. And that's a very short version of a very long journey that we were on with him. And he's still alive today. And this is my second husband, who I met and married 10 weeks after our first date. And we are now at 26 years. But in 2017, he was diagnosed terminal. And I just have to say that, at 5:00, it's his time. That's what he wants. And I just, again, how can I be wildly efficient between 1 and 5? How do I get more done in 4 hours that most people take 12? A lot of it's in my book. And I've got to tell you, you choose how you spend your time. How you spend your time is how you spend your life. And what you will remember when you become an elder, if you're a young human listening to this today, is the great memories and the relationships are the fabric of your life. So when you get your son, Erin, you're just going to love on him and spend the best time you can with him, as I know you do. And you'll remember that and he'll remember that.
Yes.
That's what you're going to do. You're going to take the gifts you have and you're going to appreciate them. And Lynn Twist, who wrote a book called The Soul of Money, I always give her a shout out, says that which we appreciate appreciates.
That part. I love that. All right. Well, I want to ask you some quick fire questions. It's called a lightning round. And you already named one of the questions. It was like a book that changed how you lead or how you think. And then you said this Soul of Money.
Soul of Money.
What is one thing you know now that you wish you'd known at 23?
So many things.
I know.
I want to be present and give you an answer and really feel into that. What I wish I could say to my 23-year-old self is, you are so beautiful. You are so loved. And you are not alone. Yeah. Because I felt all three of those things were wrong. I felt I was very ugly. I grew up in a community in Miami where all of my friends were black and brown. I felt with this orange hair and white skin, I felt very ugly. I'd been told I wasn't wanted. I was told I wasn't, supposed to be here. I wasn't good. I wish I knew then how loved I actually have been.
Mm. Yes, that's so good. What does limitless actually mean to you in your daily life?
I believe with God, all things are possible. And so I can't see how often, as a mere mortal, I have my capacity to understand what I can experience and understand. But I know that history teaches me. I'm a big student of history. I love to read. And I can tell you that remarkable things are often done by ordinary people. So when we look at where we are right now in a time of tremendous change, and probably, again, the most rapid change that we're aware of, I believe all good things come from God. I believe we have an opportunity to use AI as an accelerator. I believe that we can heal many of the things that have held us back as a species. I'm not a fan for living forever. I mean, maybe I live forever in heaven, but I'm not so a fan for living forever in this body. I'm good. God takes me. I'm very grateful for the life I've had. I want to see more women join me in the conversation about how when we heal our own mental poverty consciousness, we can actually get in the physical actions that need to happen so that children everywhere have access to water, so that children everywhere don't have to go to bed hungry, so that children everywhere who have a desire to learn can have access to those resources, so that future generations can really live in the true abundance that we've been blessed with. And I want to see that happening through these resources that are being brought to us right now. It's an interesting time to be alive, and we're here. So how do we embrace that?
Ooh, yes, that is a beautiful aspiration, a beautiful vision. And I touch and agree with you on that, because one thing about this world is we have the ability to make it whatever we wish it to be. And the more that we can anchor towards and arc towards a higher vision for our planet, for our lives, for humanity, it will happen. And so it is. And so I just want to invite you, Laura, again, to share with our listeners, our viewers, how they can stay in touch with you, how they can get your book, any initiatives you have, on the horizon. We'd love to know more.
Yeah. So as we're recording this, we're getting prepared for our 11th annual Limitless Women Conference, which is really cool. So I invite 100 women to come together each year. I've talked to you about it, Erin. I'm hoping you're going to be able to join us this year. I invite 100 women to come together and sit at the table with one another and really get into deep conversations that are not only inspiring, but also catalyzing. I want each of us to walk out of here knowing ourselves in a new way and having access to resources through new relationships, new tools, new ideas for how we can lead in the world. So it's a leadership conference that's coming up this year. If you want to know more, go to limitlesswomen.com. And then you can also access my first book that we talked about. I've written 2 books, but you can access Stop the Spinning at laurafreebook.com. And we'll put that link in there for you. It's my name, LauraFreebook.com will take you there. And and then I'm pretty easy to find online. And through Limitless Women, we've got access to our podcast and to our events and to our education programs and our community. And I'd love to see you wherever it fits for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you for offering your limitless wisdom to our audience. And for all of you who are listening and who are following, certainly subscribe to this channel. If you haven't already, share this message with a woman you believe needs some inspiration, because this was certainly a conversation that can unlock a lot for those that are wanting to take their careers, take their businesses, take their lives to the next level. Awesome. And of course, I always have my mentorship, my divine mentorship program that I offer at erinpatten.com, where you can learn more about my offerings there. Of course, my beauty business, Raw Beauty, that just recently launched, is also available, the hair growth oil. And I just am so grateful again. And thank you so much, Laura, for joining the show.
Thank you, Jeff.
And hopefully we can, spend some more time together. And all of you who are listening, I love you so much. You can follow me across social media at I am Erin Patten. I will see you on the next episode of the Meta Business Millennial Podcast. Much love and light. Peace. Did you really love this episode of the Meta Business Millennial Podcast? Well, I am honored, and I appreciate you subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends, because your feedback allows us to co-create more enlightened conversations. And if you're interested in growing your soul now, head over to my website, erinpatten.com, to find all the show notes, links, and free resources to get your energy activated today. In the meantime, stay bright, my friends. Much love and light. Peace.